Arsenal 1, West Ham nil, and I think it's not one but two hands on the Premier League title now. It's officially, I think it was done. I think it's done. That was the game that we needed to win, and we did it. I said in my last video that if we won at West Ham, we were going to be Premier League champions, and that is it. That is it. And the pure elation, the drama, the emotions, the highs, the lows, from being completely elated to being in complete you know, despair to belief to elation all over again. I mean, that what a, what a roller coaster of emotions. But that's the Premier League title running. And of course, in typical Arsenal fashion, we have to make it more difficult than we need to. And this is a club that's known for its drama. This is a club that's known for doing things a hard way. So why, of course, would I expect an easy 2-3-0 against West Ham? Why would I? Why would I? Silly me. I've been supporting this club long enough. But before we dive into, of course, the most obvious talking point, that VAR decision, let's just talk about the game in its entirety. Regarding the starting 11, I think the one that we would have all chosen. It's the one that Mikel has been able to get the best out of these players. It's the one that has given us the most amount of fluidity. It's the one that gives us the most amount of balance between defense and attack. And that's definitely the one that we needed to go with. And we saw we saw the fruits of that decision. We saw how much pressure we were putting on West Ham, the flurry of chances. We hit the bar twice. We were all over them. And I think it was going to be, at least at that time, it was looking like it was going to be an easy day at the office and we were going to get the job done and score a few goals. But eventually, Ben White comes off with an injury, and I'm praying that he is healthy because we definitely need him considering what we're competing for. But you saw Mikel talking to, his assistant managers, and you saw right then and there that, he was overthinking it. Originally, I thought, okay, play Mosquera there, keep the rest of the system. Perhaps that side of the field might stagger a little bit, but if Mosquera can rise to the occasion, great. And if not, there's a whole entire left side of the pitch that should still be working. Just one little cog in the machine isn't working ideally, but everything else should take care of itself. But he didn't do that. He moved Rice over to right back. He put Zubimendi in, and I think that was his first mistake because you are now playing two players not as of course Zubimendi, that is his preferred position, but you are now playing two players in a system that perhaps are not actually occupying the roles that best suits them, are not actually playing to those individual strengths of the player. I'd rather have one position in a system that isn't at 100% than to have two positions in a system to not be at 100%. And otherwise, I'd rather this be occupying at 100 and have this be at, let's say, 60, 65, than to have both of them be at 75. It's just not worth it. And I think we lost control of the game. West Ham all of a sudden had more control. It was a more physical battle. They were winning their duels. They were catching us on transitions. We were on the back foot. We didn't have the same amount of fluidity. We didn't have control over the game. We weren't taking it to them. We weren't playing in their half, and it became a little bit more of a back and forth, and we lost completely under control. And of course, when you're playing against teams that are fighting against relegation, the last thing that you want, especially when you're away from home, is to actually give them belief, because that is a team that gets stronger over time. It's like fighting that. It's like Hercules fighting that animal. Is it a Hydra? I can't remember now. Like where you cut one off head and two more grow back. The last thing you want to do when you go away to one of these grounds is give them belief. The second that they sniff belief, the crowd's gonna get up. They're gonna go for it. It's gonna become a culture, and all of a sudden you're in a tough physical battle, and you're no longer playing the game that you want to play, which is one that's a bit slower, one that's controlled, one where the ball's on the ground and you're controlling the tempo, and they're just sitting back, defending, trying to consolidate things as much as they can. So we lost control of the game. At halftime, he puts Skelly in for Calafiori. I think as a manager, it's tough to sometimes accept that you made a mistake, and I think it's even harsher sometimes when you put a player on as a substitute and then you take them off right away. That I think that looks bad for all the parties that were involved. I think he tried to rectify it, and by putting Skelly in for Calafiori, I think it allowed Skelly to drift a little bit more towards the middle of the park, and he thought, okay, now I'm going to have both Skelly and Rice trying to protect the ball, and Zubimendi's going to be kind of just dictating the passes. But again, not the same kind of system, not the same kind of fluidity, and we weren't getting what we needed from these players, and it did not work out. And West Ham gained more and more and more control. And frankly, if it wasn't for David Raya playing at, I think, an absolutely astronomical level, we would have been in a very, very, difficult situation. I don't think we would have come back from it. I think West Ham would have probably grown even stronger into the game and probably would have walked away with all 3 points, much to ours and Tottenham's despair, ironically. But Raya bought Arteta enough time to fix the situation. And as I was actually watching the game, we had so much of the ball in West Ham's own defensive third, but they have so many men behind the ball, and you can tell what they were doing was just congesting the middle of the park. They were happy to allow us to get the ball to the wings. Bukayo, I think, had a shit game. Let's talk about it. Shit game. That's the reality. And as they couldn't get on the ball, the passing lanes just weren't there. And I myself said Odegaard needs to come on because when the majority of the possession is occurring between your back line and they're almost all the way up to the half circle, you need to have some sort of creative midfielder who is capable of dropping in deep, collecting the ball from the center backs, and dictating play. Because when you give that kind of player time and space on the ball, he can either pick out a pass from a runner, he can do a little 1-2, and he can unlock some movements, or he can pull some defenders from their defensive positions and actually leave some space in behind for somebody to actually occupy. And I thought Odegaard was the right substitution, and I'm so glad when I saw that he was coming on and it was needed. Now I'm not a genius where I actually would have put Eze to the left and put Odegaard down the middle, and I would have taken off Trossard because I think Eze is that player that can score a goal out of nothing. But ultimately, perhaps in learning from his previous mistakes, he said, okay, I'm going to leave Trossard in the position where I know that he plays best. I'm going to take Eze off and let Odegaard be the man. And it worked. Odegaard not only did exactly what was being asked of him in terms of collecting the ball deep, but he was dictating the play. He was putting through balls in behind. He was trying to hit the 1-2s. He was trying to drive into the space. He was keeping things sticking. He was, protecting the ball. He was driving forward. He was doing everything that was asked of him, and he had a phenomenal performance, perhaps the best, 20 minutes I've seen from Martin Odegaard in over a year and a half. And he drove into the box, kept his composure, had his tight touch control, found Trossard, didn't just, whip the ball into the box and hope somebody got to it. He picked out a pass and we buried it. And the feelings were through the roof. I shouted, I yelled, my freaking dog was shitting itself from all the yelling that I had to do. I was absolutely over the moon. And from this inspired, impassioned fury of a fan, immediately it became emotional and teary eyed because it was this idea of this club finally getting over the line. And then just a few minutes later, I'm watching the goal go into our own net. And immediately I'm in the dubs and it's despair. And I'm seeing cries out for fouls and all these things. I'm seeing Arteta grabbing his arm. I don't know what's going on. I didn't see everything in the scrambling of the play. And all of a sudden, it's a VAR check. And when I see the replay, I was convinced that they were going to overturn it. Now, a lot of people have been talking about this. It's only natural. I saw Peter Schmeichel, that schmuck, coming on and talking about how that was a disgrace. I'm seeing people on Twitter putting compilations of Arsenal Football Club and our corner tactics and how we like to crowd the keeper and all these things. People are saying the game's gone soft and all of these things. And let's just set the record straight right here, right now. One of the clear advantages that a goalkeeper has whenever there's a cross into his box is that every single referee allows them to have command over it. They give them a leeway in which they say, you are allowed to go for the ball, you are allowed to be physical, and you are allowed to get yourself up there because this is your area of the pitch. And there's a clear advantage that a keeper has over an attacking player, and it's the fact that when you and a keeper both jump for the exact same ball, guess what, buddy? He can use his hands. And when he lifts those hands up to grab the ball, there's 3-4 extra feet that you're not going to be able to get to. That's why a keeper needs to command his box. So when you and a keeper are both going up for a ball and you as an attacking player put your arm out and you put his hand on his arm and you take away the one advantage that he has in those kind of argy-bargy situations, the one advantage that he has as a keeper, which is to collect the ball with his hands, the one thing you're not allowed to do, and you are hindering his ability to go and collect the ball, it's a clear foul. That is it. I don't care if you are pushing and shoving one another. I don't care if you're colliding with one another. I don't care if you both went up there and you hit the side of his body and he went down. I don't care about that. Be stronger. It's a physical game. Command your box. Be better. I will always put that burden on the keeper. But if both you and the keeper go up for the ball and he goes to collect and you put your arm out and try to swat his arm away or put pressure on his arm to prevent him from getting the ball, it's a clear foul. It is a clear foul. You are hindering the one advantage, the one privilege that the only player on the pitch has to go for the ball with his hands. Clear foul. So to equate that with Ben White backing into the keeper in the 6 yard box and just being a body that he has to sort of wrestle around to get to the corner, the ball in the air is not the same thing. It's not. And I'm not saying it as a fan. I'm not saying it with bias. I'm not saying with any kind of, smugness or, you know, the deceit. I'm saying with all the sincerity in the world. It's a clear and obvious foul, especially given the fact that the ball touches Raya's hands. And you can tell that as he goes up for it to try to grab it, he probably would have wanted to punch it or swat it. And with the arm there, hindered his ability in it. And it hits his hands very softly, lands to the player, and it's the goal. Now, if you put a hand on the goalkeeper's arms and the ball was nowhere near the keeper, or the ball went someone else, and yeah, okay, forget about it. But it directly impacted his ability to collect the ball because that's what he was going for. So there's no discussion to be had. I think it was a clear and obvious decision. I think it was a correct decision by VAR, and ultimately, it led to us getting the win. We rode our luck. I think obviously the game was overturned by a very poor in-game decision by Mikel Arteta, but thankfully, due to David Raya's heroics and then him eventually changing with Martin Odegaard, we were able to get this much-needed win. And I think that's it. That's the Premier League title in our hands. We have Burnley next at home, who's already been relegated in front of our home fans. I expect that to be an amazing day. And then we're going against away to Crystal Palace against an Oliver Glasner team in which manager himself has already admitted he's going to play a very heavily rotated side, considering that he has the Conference League final just a few days later. So this was the game that we needed to win, and we went ahead and we did it. And I can't believe it, but Arsenal for the first time actually freaking delivers when they need to in a big moment. And hopefully we see the same thing again in the Champions League final. Thank you guys for watching. If you've been enjoying some of the content and you've been watching me now for some time, I've not want to do this, but please do leave a like and please leave a comment. The more you engage, the more the channel grows and the more it helps me out. So if you have been watching, you have been enjoying it, help me out any way you can. Keep that in mind for all the upcoming videos and see you in the next one. Thanks.